They say never judge a book by its cover, but my daughter-in-law Vanessa did exactly that when she called me just the cleaning lady to her wealthy friends. What she didn't know was that I owned the mortgage to their luxury condo and 51% of my son's company. I spent 30 years scrubbing floors while secretly building an empire worth millions. This is the story of how I finally revealed the truth, and the look on her face was worth every callus on my hands. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never dreamed of becoming wealthy. Growing up in a modest neighborhood in Denver, Colorado, my parents taught me the value of hard work and honesty above all else. My father repaired shoes and my mother worked at the local diner. We weren't poor, just comfortable enough not to worry about next month's rent, but not comfortable enough for luxuries. My name is Eleanor Green, though everyone calls me Ellie. I married my high school sweetheart, David, when we were both 22. He worked construction while I took accounting classes at the community college. We had simple dreams: a small house, maybe a couple of kids, annual camping trips to the mountains. Nothing extravagant, just a good, honest life. David and I welcomed our son Robert into the world 3 years later. Those early days were a blur of midnight feedings, first steps, and tight budgets. David worked overtime whenever possible, and I started doing bookkeeping from home to bring in extra money. We scraped and saved for a down payment on a small 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a decent school district. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday in April. Robert was just 7 years old. David was working on a high-rise downtown when a cable snapped. The doctors said he died instantly, the only mercy in an otherwise merciless situation. The construction company provided a modest settlement, but after medical bills and funeral costs, there wasn't much left. I found myself a 30-year-old widow with a second-grade son, a mortgage, and less than 6 months of savings. I applied for every office job I could find, hoping to use my accounting courses, but without a completed degree or significant experience, I received rejection after rejection. Desperation grew as our savings dwindled. Then Mrs. Henderson from 3 doors down mentioned that the cleaning service she used was hiring. "It's honest work, Ellie," she said, patting my hand, "and they pay weekly." And that's how I became a cleaning lady. Sunrise Cleaning Services assigned me to homes in Willow Creek, an affluent suburb with houses 3 times the size of mine. My first day, I stood in a kitchen bigger than my entire living room, staring at appliances that cost more than my car. I swallowed my pride and got to work. The job wasn't glamorous, but it had unexpected benefits. The hours were flexible, allowing me to be home when Robert finished school. The physical work helped exhaust me enough to sleep despite my grief, and most importantly, it paid our bills. "It's temporary," I told myself every morning as I loaded cleaning supplies into my car. "Just until something better comes along." But something better didn't come along. Months turned into years. Robert grew taller, and I grew more efficient at removing stubborn shower stains and polishing marble countertops to a mirror shine. What my wealthy clients didn't know was that while I cleaned their homes, I was listening and learning. Many of them worked in finance, law, or real estate, and they often took calls while I dusted their offices or vacuumed their living rooms. They spoke freely around me as if I were invisible, just another household appliance that happened to hold a mop. The market's trending down. Sell telecommunications and invest in healthcare. One client barked into his phone while I wiped down his kitchen. "That commercial property on Madison is going for half what it's worth. The owner's desperate after the divorce," another told her colleague as I scrubbed her bathroom tiles. I started taking notes during my lunch breaks, reading financial books from the library, and using a small portion of each paycheck to make modest investments. When Mrs. Blackwell, a financial advisor, left investment newsletters lying around, I'd devour their contents while eating my sandwich in her sunroom. 5 years into my cleaning career, David's life insurance policy finally paid out after a lengthy legal battle with the insurance company. It wasn't a fortune, $100,000, but it was enough to give me options. I could have used it to pursue my accounting degree or open a small business. Instead, I followed a tip I'd overheard from Mr. Peterson, who never noticed me dusting as he loudly discussed an upcoming foreclosure auction on some commercial properties downtown. I formed an LLC, just as I'd heard Mrs. Jensen explaining to her daughter during a call I overheard while polishing silver, and purchased a small office building for $85,000. The property needed work, but I'd learned enough from my cleaning clients, who flipped houses to know which repairs were essential and which could wait. I used my remaining $15,000 to fix the roof and update the electrical systems, then rented out the spaces to small businesses at rates slightly below market value to ensure full occupancy, all while continuing to clean houses 6 days a week. Robert was 12 by then, entering the age where children become acutely aware of social status. The first time he asked me to drop him off around the corner from school, I felt a sting of shame. "Why?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He stared at his sneakers, the ones I'd bought on clearance. "The other kids, they know. You clean houses. Tommy Jensen called you a maid." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that 12-year-old boys aren't known for their emotional maturity. "And what's wrong with being a maid?" "Nothing," he mumbled. "It's just, Mr. Jensen is a lawyer, and Mrs. Peterson is a doctor, and Casey's dad owns restaurants. And I clean their houses," I finished for him. "Robert, look at me. There is no shame in honest work. Ever. I clean because it puts food on our table and keeps a roof over our heads. I'm not ashamed, and you shouldn't be either." He nodded, but his request to be dropped off a block away continued. I obliged, understanding that adolescence is hard enough without adding social stigma to the mix. What Robert didn't know, what no one knew, was that my single commercial property had grown to 3, then 5. I'd observed how my wealthy clients leveraged their assets and followed their example, using rental income from one property to secure loans for the next. By the time Robert entered high school, my invisible real estate company, Phoenix Holdings, LLC, owned 12 commercial properties across Denver. Yet I continued cleaning houses, partly because the steady income provided security, partly because I'd developed relationships with my clients, but mostly because I saw no reason to stop. The work kept me grounded. It reminded me daily of the difference between genuine worth and mere appearances. Robert excelled in high school, particularly in business and marketing classes. With his outgoing personality and natural charisma, he seemed destined for a career in sales or advertising. I put aside money for his college fund, supplementing it with proceeds from my investments. "You don't need to worry about tuition, Robert," I told him during his junior year. "I've been saving since you were little." He looked surprised. "But how? I mean, cleaning doesn't pay that well?" I finished for him. "You'd be surprised what you can accomplish with disciplined saving and careful planning." I didn't mention the commercial properties or the stock portfolio. I'd decided long ago that Robert needed to forge his own path without the cushion of inherited wealth. Too many of my clients' children had grown entitled and directionless, handed everything without learning the value of earning it themselves. Robert attended the University of Colorado on a partial scholarship, with me covering the remainder. He studied marketing and business administration, thriving in the collegiate environment. During his senior year, he interned at Pinnacle Marketing Group, one of Denver's top agencies. That's where he met Vanessa Taylor. The first time Robert brought her home, I knew she was different from his previous girlfriends. She arrived in a BMW, wearing designer clothes I recognized from cleaning, the closets of my wealthiest clients. Her smile was practiced, her handshake firm but brief, her eyes never quite settling on any part of our modest home. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Green," she said, glancing at a family photo on the wall. "Robert has told me so much about you. All good things, I hope," I smiled, offering her homemade lemonade. Of course, she replied, accepting the glass without drinking from it. He says you've worked in home services for years. Home services, a polite euphemism for cleaning toilets. That's right, I confirmed. 20 years now. Something flickered across her face, surprised perhaps that I would admit it so readily. That's admirable, she said, staying in the same line of work for so long. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I recognized the tone from my wealthier clients when they felt obligated to compliment something they didn't actually value. It's honest work, I replied, and it's allowed me to provide for Robert all these years. Robert jumped in then, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Mom's the hardest worker I know. She put me through college entirely on her own. Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. That's impressive on a cleaner's salary. Before I could respond, Robert changed the subject to their upcoming graduation. I let it go, but I noticed how Vanessa's eyes kept darting around our home, cataloging our simple furniture, the lack of expensive art, the modest television. After she left, Robert beamed. Isn't she amazing? Her father's the chief of surgery at Denver Memorial, and her mother runs a successful interior design firm. She seems very polished, I offered diplomatically. Her family has a summer home in Aspen, he continued, and she's already been offered a position at Pinnacle after graduation. I nodded, wondering if Robert had been offered a similar position. He hadn't mentioned one. Over the next year, Robert and Vanessa's relationship intensified. He spent more time at her downtown apartment than at home, and when he spoke of his future plans, they invariably included Vanessa. I kept my reservations to myself, wanting him to make his own choices, even if I questioned whether Vanessa truly saw him, or merely the potential she thought he represented. Meanwhile, my investment portfolio continued to grow. Phoenix Holdings now owned 20 commercial properties, including a high-rise downtown that housed several prestigious law firms. I'd diversified into angel investing, using insights gleaned from listening to my clients' business calls to identify promising startups before they hit the mainstream radar. One such investment was in Rapid Scale Marketing, a digital marketing firm founded by two young entrepreneurs I'd overheard Mrs. Lawson discussing while I cleaned her home office. I provided $200,000 in seed funding through my investment company, taking a 30% stake in the business. Within 3 years, RapidScale became one of Denver's fastest-growing agencies. The irony wasn't lost on me when Robert mentioned applying for a position there after his Pinnacle contract ended. They're incredibly selective, he said over Sunday. Dinner, the only time I reliably saw him anymore. But I have an interview next week. I bit my tongue to avoid telling him that I could probably make a call to secure his position. That's wonderful, honey. I'm sure you'll impress them. It did indeed get the job, though I had nothing to do with it. His talent and experience spoke for themselves. Within 18 months, he had been promoted twice, becoming the youngest account director in the company's history. That's when he proposed to Vanessa. She said yes, he announced, bursting through my front door one Friday evening, his face flushed with excitement. We're getting married next spring. I hugged him tightly, genuinely happy to see him so joyful. Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you both. There's more, he continued, pulling away to look at me. I'm thinking of starting my own agency. RapidScale has been great, but I've built enough client relationships to branch out. Vanessa thinks it's the perfect time, especially with her father offering to help with the initial investment. Something shifted in my chest. Your own agency? That's a big step, Robert. I know, but I'm ready. His eyes shone with ambition. Vanessa's father knows so many potential clients through the hospital board, and her mother's interior design connections could help us secure some luxury brands. I nodded slowly. And what about startup costs? Office space, employees, equipment? Well, Dr. Taylor, Vanessa's dad, is offering to invest $150,000 for a 40% stake, Robert explained. And I've saved about $50,000. We'll start small, maybe in a co-working space until we're established. I tamped down the immediate urge to offer my own investment. This was his journey to navigate. You've clearly thought this through, I said instead. I'm proud of you for taking such an ambitious step. Thanks, Mom. He hesitated, then added, There is one thing. Vanessa and I are looking at condos downtown. Since we'll both be working in the city center, it makes sense to live there too. That sounds practical, I agreed. Those downtown condos can be quite expensive, though. Robert nodded. Yeah, we've been looking at the Monarch. They have a 2-bedroom unit available on the 12th floor. I nearly choked on my tea. The Monarch was one of the most exclusive residential buildings in Denver, and it happened to be owned by Phoenix Holdings, though through several layers of corporate structures that obscured my connection. The Monarch? I repeated. That's quite upscale. Vanessa loves it, Robert said, not noticing my reaction. And with both our incomes plus the money her parents are giving us as an engagement gift, we can manage the down payment. The mortgage will be steep, but worth it. For the location and amenities. I nodded again, processing this information. The mortgage would indeed be steep, especially from Woodland Financial, the lending institution that provided financing for Monarch residents, and in which I held a significant investment stake. Just be careful not to overextend yourselves, I cautioned. New business, new home. That's a lot of financial pressure all at once. He smiled confidently. We'll be fine, Mom. Vanessa has excellent financial sense, and once Summit Marketing takes off, money won't be an issue. Summit Marketing. So he'd already named his new venture. The next 6 months passed in a whirlwind of wedding planning and business development. Robert secured an impressive roster of initial clients, many through Vanessa's family connections, and officially incorporated Summit Marketing. He leased office space in the Peterson Building, another Phoenix Holdings property, though he had no idea, and hired 4 employees to start. Meanwhile, Vanessa took charge of wedding preparations, selecting the prestigious Carter Museum for the ceremony and reception. When Robert tentatively mentioned the cost, she waved away his concerns. Daddy says he'll help if we need it, she assured him. Besides, we need to make the right impression. Half of Denver's business elite will be there. Think of the networking, opportunities. I was included in some of the wedding planning, primarily for appearances rather than input. During one cake tasting, while Robert stepped away to take a business call, Vanessa turned to me with a practiced smile. I hope you don't mind that we've arranged for a makeup artist and stylist for you on the wedding day, she said. We want everyone looking their best for the photos. I maintained my composure. That's thoughtful of you. And about your outfit, she continued. I took the liberty of selecting a mother of the groom dress. It's simple but elegant. Nothing too. She paused, searching for the right word. Flashy, as if a cleaning lady might show up in something inappropriately ostentatious. I'm sure whatever you've chosen will be lovely, I replied, silently amused at the irony. The previous week, I'd closed a deal acquiring a boutique hotel in downtown Sao. Denver for $12 million, a transaction that would have shocked Vanessa speechless. The engagement party was held at the Taylor family's country club. I arrived alone, dressed in a conservative navy blue dress I'd purchased specifically for the occasion. As I entered the lavishly decorated ballroom, I immediately felt the curious gazes of Vanessa's family and friends. Robert hurried over to greet me, looking handsome in his tailored suit. Mom, you're here. Come meet everyone. He led me toward a group of well-dressed couples, Vanessa at the center in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly when she saw me. Everyone, this is my mother, Eleanor, Robert announced proudly. I received polite nods and murmured greetings. Dr. Taylor, a distinguished man with silver hair, extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you, Eleanor. Robert speaks highly of you." "The pleasure is mine," I replied, shaking his hand. "You've raised a wonderful daughter." Mrs. Taylor, elegant in a red cocktail dress, gave me a practiced smile. "Thank you. We're delighted to welcome Robert into our family." The conversation flowed around general topics until a woman in the group, one of Vanessa's aunts, I gathered, asked the inevitable question. "And what do you do, Eleanor?" Before I could answer, Vanessa interjected smoothly. "Ellie has worked in residential services for many years. She's very dedicated to her career." Residential services, the euphemism, had evolved. "I'm a cleaning professional," I clarified, meeting the woman's eyes directly. "I've run my own residential cleaning business for over 25 years." A momentary silence fell over the group. I saw the flicker of embarrassment cross Robert's face before he mastered it. "Mom's the hardest working person I know," he added quickly. "She put me through college on her own." Dr. Taylor nodded approvingly. "That shows remarkable character. Starting from humble beginnings makes success all the sweeter, doesn't it, Robert?" The conversation shifted to Robert's new marketing agency, and I felt myself fading into the background, exactly as I had for years while cleaning the homes of people just like these. They spoke around me, through me, but rarely to me directly. Later that evening, I overheard Vanessa speaking to her mother near the ladies' room, unaware of my presence in one of the stalls. "Did you see her handbag?" Vanessa whispered. "It's from Target. Target, Mom." "She seems like a nice woman," Mrs. Taylor replied diplomatically. "Very unpretentious." "It's embarrassing," Vanessa continued. "Robert's done so well for himself despite his background. But every time his mother shows up in her sensible shoes and department store clothes, it's like a glaring reminder." "Darling, not everyone has our advantages," Mrs. Taylor said soothingly. "And it speaks well of Robert that he remains close to his mother despite the social disparity." I know, and I don't mind her personally. She's sweet in that working-class way. But the Hendersons will be at the wedding. The Hendersons' mom. What if they recognize her as the woman who used to clean their guest bathrooms? I stepped out of the stall then, causing both women to freeze in mortification. I washed my hands, calmly, dried them with a paper towel, and turned to face them. "The Hendersons were always very kind employers," I said pleasantly. Mrs. Henderson particularly appreciated how I organized her linen closet. "Good evening, ladies." I left them standing there, speechless, and returned to the party with my head held high. But inside, something had shifted. For years, I'd maintained my cleaning career partly out of principle, the belief that honest work deserved respect regardless of social status. I'd hidden my wealth to ensure Robert developed his own work ethic and sense of self-worth. But now I wondered if I'd taken the charade too far. Had my silence about my financial success inadvertently contributed to the very attitude I deplored, the notion that a person's worth was tied to their visible wealth and status? As I watched Robert and Vanessa circulating among the guests, I realized that perhaps it was time for Eleanor Green, cleaning lady, to introduce the world to Eleanor Green, businesswoman and investor. But not quite yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. 2 weeks after the engagement party, I received an unexpected phone call from Dr. Taylor. "Eleanor, I hope I'm not disturbing you," he began, his tone cordial but businesslike. "Not at all," I replied, surprised by the contact. "What can I do? For you?" "I wanted to discuss Robert's business venture," he said. "As his primary investor, I'm naturally concerned about protecting my investment." Primary investor? As if Robert's $50,000 and his own sweat equity counted for nothing. "I understand," I said neutrally. "The thing is," Dr. Taylor continued, "I've been reviewing the business plan, and frankly, I'm not convinced Robert has the experience necessary to run an agency of this caliber. I'm considering bringing in a more seasoned executive as CEO. I felt a flare of maternal protectiveness. Robert has been in the industry for years. He's extremely capable. I'm sure he is for his age, Dr. Taylor replied with a hint of condescension. But Summit Marketing is positioning itself to serve high-net-worth clients and luxury brands. The leadership needs to reflect that level of sophistication. I understood immediately what he was implying. Robert, with his cleaning lady, mother and modest upbringing, lacked the pedigree Dr. Taylor deemed necessary. "Have you discussed this with Robert?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first, as a courtesy. He respects your opinion, and I thought perhaps you could help him see the wisdom in this arrangement. He would remain as creative director, of course, a very prestigious position." I took a moment to compose my response. "Dr. Taylor, while I appreciate your concern, I believe Robert should make this decision himself. It's his company after all. With my financing," he reminded me. "Look, Eleanor, I understand you want what's best for your son. We both do. But the business world can be unforgiving, especially to those who aren't. Well, let's say, properly connected. I'm trying to protect Robert from failure." "I see," I said quietly. "Thank you for your concern." After hanging up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table. So this was how it would be. Robert would build the business with his talent and dedication, only to have control wrested away because he didn't come from the right background, because his mother cleaned houses for a living. The irony, of course, was that I could buy Summit, marketing 10 times over without blinking. I could purchase Dr. Taylor's entire medical practice if I wished. But revealing that now would only humiliate Robert, making him feel that his achievements weren't his own. I needed a more subtle approach. The next day, I called a meeting with my financial team, the small group of professionals who managed my various business interests while maintaining absolute discretion. We gathered in a private conference room at my downtown office building, a space I rarely visited but maintained for exactly this type of situation. "I need information on Summit Marketing," I told them. "Specifically, their lease agreement at the Peterson building, their banking arrangements, and any outstanding loans or credit lines." My chief financial advisor, James Holloway, raised an eyebrow. "That's your son's company, isn't it?" "It is," I confirmed. "And I need to know exactly where they stand financially without anyone, including Robert, knowing I'm asking." Within 48 hours, I had a complete picture. Summit Marketing was paying market rate for their office space, no special treatment, as I'd always instructed my property managers regarding any business connected to me personally. They had a business account with First Denver Bank, where Vanessa's uncle served on the board, and had recently applied for a $200,000 credit line for equipment and expansion. Most concerning, Dr. Taylor's investment came with conditions Robert hadn't mentioned to me: quarterly performance reviews by an outside consultant of Dr. Taylor's choosing, and a clause allowing him to appoint a CEO if certain performance metrics weren't met within the first year. Robert had essentially signed away his control of his own company. I spent the next day considering my options. I could simply tell Robert who I was and offer to buy out Dr. Taylor's investment. But that risked undermining his confidence and independence. I could anonymously invest through one of my holding companies, diluting Dr. Taylor's ownership stake. Or I could wait and watch, stepping in only if necessary. Before I could decide, Robert called, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Mom, can I come over tonight? I need to talk to you about something." When he arrived, his normally confident posture was slumped, his expression troubled. I made us both tea, a ritual from his childhood whenever he was upset, and sat beside him at the kitchen table. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" He stared into his mug. "Dr. Taylor wants to bring in a new CEO for Summit. says I'm not experienced enough to lead the company. The air quotes were audible in his tone. What about your agreement? Doesn't your contract protect your position? Robert laughed bitterly. Turns out there's fine print I didn't notice. He can replace me if we don't hit certain revenue targets in the first year. Targets that weren't explicitly stated in the original business plan. And what does Vanessa say about this? He sighed heavily. She thinks her father is right. Says it will take the pressure off me and let me focus on the creative side. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. But it's my company, Mom. My vision. I don't want to be sidelined in my own business. I reached across the table to cover his hand with mine. Then don't let them sideline you. Easy to say. Dr. Taylor's investment is keeping us afloat until we build a stronger client base. Without it, I'd have to lay off staff or take out a massive loan. Or find another investor, I suggested. Robert shook his head. With the economy as it is? Unlikely. And even if I did, Dr. Taylor could make things difficult. He has connections throughout Denver's business community. I considered my next words carefully. Robert, throughout your life, I've tried to teach you that a person's worth isn't determined by their bank account or social standing. That honest work, whatever form it takes, deserves respect. I know, Mom, and I believe that. Do you? I asked gently. Because sometimes I wonder if you've absorbed more of society's prejudices than you realize. Would you be having these problems with Dr. Taylor if I were a doctor or lawyer instead of a cleaning lady? He looked startled. That's not fair. I've never been ashamed of you. Haven't you? Just a little? I kept my tone soft, free of accusation. When you were 12 and asked me to drop you off a block from school? When you introduced me at the engagement party and Vanessa quickly interjected with residential services instead of cleaning? When you didn't correct her? Robert flushed. That's different. I was just trying to manage perceptions, I suggested. Present yourself in the best possible light for your future in-laws and business associates? He had the grace to look ashamed. Maybe. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me, Robert, but ask yourself this. If you're willing to let others diminish me to elevate yourself socially, what else might you compromise? He sat with that question for a long moment, his expression troubled. Finally, he looked up, determination replacing the defeat in his eyes. You're right. I need to stand up to Dr. Taylor, even if it means risking the business. I smiled. That's my boy. And who knows? Perhaps another opportunity will present itself. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the property manager of the Peterson building, instructing him to reduce Summit Marketing's rent by 30%, citing a new tenant incentive program that was being retroactively applied to recent leases. The second call was to James Holloway, authorizing him to establish a new investment fund specifically for emerging marketing agencies, with Summit Marketing slated to receive its first round of financing, $500,000 for a 25% stake, contingent upon the current management team remaining in place. The offer would come through Emerald Ventures, one of my more visible investment vehicles, though still several corporate layers removed from being connected to Eleanor Green, cleaning lady. A week later, Robert called me, his voice brimming with excitement. Mom, you won't believe what happened. First, our building management randomly selected us for some rent reduction program. Then this morning, I got a call from Emerald Ventures. They're this huge investment firm that specializes in creative agencies. They want to invest $500,000 in Summit. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I replied, enjoying his enthusiasm. What does this mean for you? It changes everything. With the reduced overhead and this new investment, we're completely stable. I can buy out Dr. Taylor's stake and maintain control of the company. And the best part? Emerald specifically wants me to stay on as CEO. They said they're investing in my vision and leadership. I'm so proud of you, I said, meaning it more than he could know. You built something valuable enough to attract serious investors. Thanks, Mom. His voice softened. And I've been thinking about what you said, about not compromising. You were right. I had a long talk with Vanessa about how I've let her families, attitudes, influence me too much. How did that go? He chuckled. Let's just say it was a necessary conversation. She doesn't fully understand yet, but she's trying. And she agreed that buying out her father's investment is the right move professionally. That's progress. Yeah. And Mom, I'd like you to come to the office next week, meet the team, see what we're building. I want them to know the woman who taught me everything about hard work and integrity. The warmth in his voice made my eyes sting. I'd love that, Robert. The following week, I visited Summit Marketing's offices, dressed in my usual practical attire. Nothing that would hint at my true financial status. Robert proudly showed me around the bright, creative space, introducing me to his small but talented team. I noticed how they responded to him with genuine respect, not the deference born of hierarchy, but the admiration earned through leadership. And this is my mother, Eleanor Green, he said to each of them. She raised me on her own while running her own cleaning business. Everything I know about perseverance and work ethic, I learned from her. No euphemisms, no embarrassment, just honesty and pride. Over lunch with Robert and his team, the conversation turned to Summit's future plans, now that they had secured the Emerald Ventures investment. We're expanding our client base beyond Denver, Robert explained. Looking at potential satellite offices in Seattle and Chicago by next year. That's ambitious, I observed. What about your personal life? The wedding's in 3 months, and you and Vanessa just moved into that lovely condo at the Monarch. Something flickered across Robert's face. Actually, we're having some issues with the mortgage. The lender, Woodland Financial, suddenly increased our interest rate, claiming some risk reassessment protocol. It's going to stretch our budget. Pretty thin. I feigned surprise. That seems unfair. Can't you negotiate with them? Robert shook his head. Vanessa tried through her family connections, but apparently Woodland is owned by some larger investment consortium. Very corporate, very rigid. Well, I said mildly, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You always do. Later that afternoon, as Robert walked me to my car, he hesitated, then asked, Mom, would it be okay if I brought Vanessa over for dinner this weekend? Just the 3 of us? She's been reevaluating some things since our talk. Of course, I agreed. Sunday. At 6? The Sunday dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Vanessa arrived with a bottle of wine, nothing ostentatious, I noted, and seemed genuinely interested in helping me in the kitchen. Robert tells me you make the best pot roast in Colorado, she said, chopping carrots with unexpected competence. My mother's recipe, I explained. Nothing fancy, but filling. As we worked, Vanessa cleared her throat awkwardly. Eleanor, I owe you an apology. I haven't been as respectful of your work as I should have been. I glanced up from the potatoes I was peeling. Oh? Yes. She had the grace to look embarrassed. I was raised to value certain types of careers over others. It was wrong of me to act as if your job was something to be ashamed of. I studied her face, seeing a genuine attempt at humility. Apology accepted. We all have our blind spots, Vanessa. The important thing is recognizing them. During dinner, the conversation flowed more naturally than it ever had before. Robert shared stories about his childhood, including some embarrassing ones I'd forgotten, and Vanessa listened with genuine interest. So you actually tried to start a neighborhood cleaning business when you were 10? She asked him, laughing. Complete with business cards made from construction paper, I confirmed. He undercut my rates, too. Robert grinned. Entrepreneurship starts young. As the evening wound down, Robert mentioned the mortgage issue again. We might have to look at other housing options if Woodland doesn't budge on this interest rate. Vanessa surprised me by shrugging. It's just a condo, Robert. We don't need to live at the Monarch to be happy. I hid my smile behind my wine glass. Perhaps there was hope for her after all. After they left, I sat in my quiet living room, contemplating the changes in their attitudes. Robert was standing up for himself professionally and personally. Vanessa was showing signs of growth beyond her privileged upbringing. Maybe my revelation could wait a bit longer. But fate had other plans. The following Wednesday, I was cleaning Mrs. Whitmore's home, one of my longest-standing clients, when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Whitmore was at her yoga class, so I answered, expecting a package delivery. Instead, I found Vanessa standing on the doorstep, her expression frozen in shock. "Eleanor?" she gasped. "What are you? Why are you here?" I glanced down at my cleaning apron and the rubber gloves on my hands. "I'm working, Vanessa. This is what I do, remember?" Her eyes darted past me to the elegant interior of the Whitmore mansion. "You clean the Whitmore's house? But they're coming to our wedding. They're friends with my parents." "Yes," I agreed calmly. "I've been cleaning for Mrs. Whitmore for 15 years. Did you need something from her? She's not home at the moment." Horsh, Vanessa seemed unable to process the situation. I just came to drop off their wedding invitation personally. My mother thought it would be more elegant than mailing it. "I can give it to her when she returns," I offered, extending my gloved hand. Vanessa hesitated, then handed over the thick cream envelope. "Thank you," she mumbled, already backing toward her car. I knew what would happen next. Vanessa would tell her mother. Mrs. Taylor would tell Dr. Taylor. And eventually, the whispers would reach Robert. His mother was cleaning the homes of their wedding guests. The humiliation they imagined this would cause was, of course, entirely of their own making. Sure enough, Robert called that evening, his voice tight. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you cleaned the Whitmore's house?" "Why would I?" I countered. "I clean dozens of homes. Should I provide you with a complete client list?" "That's not the point." He sounded frustrated. "Vanessa's completely freaked out. The Whitmores are major donors to her father's hospital wing. And they're going to be at our wedding. They're going to see you and know you're, you know." "The cleaning lady?" I finished for him. "Yes, they will. Just as they've known for the past 15 years. Martha Whitmore has never treated me with anything but respect, Robert. Perhaps you could learn from her example." A heavy silence fell between us. When he spoke again, his voice was subdued. "I'm sorry. I'm not handling this well." "No," I agreed. "You're not. And I think it's time we had a more honest conversation about why." "What do you mean?" "Come over tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, and bring Vanessa. There's something I need to show you both." The next evening, I greeted them at the door, dressed not in my usual practical clothes, but in a tailored designer suit I normally reserved for financial meetings. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup subtle but flawless. Robert did a double take. "Mom, what's going on?" "Come in," I said, leading them not to the kitchen where we usually gathered, but to my home office, a room I'd kept locked for years, claiming it was just for storage. The office featured a large mahogany desk, state-of-the-art computer equipment, and walls lined with financial certificates and business awards. A large monitor displayed the current value of my investment portfolio, a number with enough zeros to make Vanessa's eyes widen comically. "I think it's time we clear up some misconceptions," I said, gesturing for them to sit in the leather chairs facing my desk. "I don't understand," Robert said, looking around in confusion. "What is all this?" I took a deep breath. "Robert, Vanessa, I'm not just a cleaning lady. I haven't been just anything for a very long time. I'm the founder and CEO of Phoenix Holdings," I explained. watching their expressions shift from confusion to disbelief. I own 27 commercial properties throughout Denver, including the Peterson building where Summit Marketing is located. I'm also a major shareholder in Woodland Financial, which holds your mortgage on the Monarch condominium, a building that, incidentally, I also own. Robert's mouth opened and closed without sound. Vanessa had gone completely pale. But that's not possible, Robert finally managed. You're a cleaning lady. I am a cleaning lady, I confirmed. I'm also a successful investor and businesswoman. The two aren't mutually exclusive. But how? Vanessa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How could you possibly afford to buy properties like the Monarch? I smiled. I started small, using David's life insurance money to purchase a foreclosed office building. I fixed it up, rented the spaces, and used that income to secure loans for more properties. Over time, I expanded into angel investing and equity partnerships. But you kept cleaning houses, Robert said, still struggling to comprehend. Why would you do that if you had all this money? Several reasons, I replied. The regular income provided security during the early years when my investments were still volatile. The flexible schedule allowed me to be present for you. And most importantly, I found value in the work itself. Value in scrubbing toilets? Vanessa blurted, then immediately looked mortified at her own words. Yes, Vanessa, even in scrubbing. Toilets, I said evenly. There's dignity in any job done well. More importantly, my cleaning work gave me access to conversations and information that informed my investment decisions. The wealthy tend to speak freely in front of service workers, as if we're invisible. Robert leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Why didn't you tell me? All these years, letting me think we were just getting by? I wanted you to develop your own work ethic, to build your own success without relying on mine. But I've been watching closely. The rent reduction program that helped Summit Marketing, my doing. The investment from Emerald Ventures, also me. I wanted to help without undermining your independence. A look of realization crossed Robert's face. You bought out Dr. Taylor's investment. Technically, Emerald Ventures did, I corrected. But yes, I'm behind it. I heard about his plans to replace you as CEO. He told you that? Robert asked, surprised. He called me, thought I might help convince you to accept the demotion. He didn't realize who he was really speaking to. Vanessa was staring at the investment portfolio displayed on the monitor. Are those numbers real? They are, I confirmed. That's the current valuation of Phoenix Holdings and my various investment vehicles. She swallowed hard. That's more than my parents' net worth, several times over. Money isn't everything, Vanessa, I said gently. But since it's clearly important to you, yes, I'm what society would consider wealthy. Robert stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his back to us. I don't understand. If you had all this money, why did we live so modestly? Why let me struggle to pay for college? Why endure Vanessa's family looking down on you? I joined him at the window, placing a hand on his shoulder. Because money doesn't define who we are, Robert. The struggles you faced taught you resilience. The modest lifestyle we lived taught you gratitude. As for the Taylors, I've spent decades being underestimated because of my occupation. It doesn't bother me anymore. But it bothers me, he said, turning to face me. All this time, I felt this. This need to protect you, to make sure you were taken care of. And now, I find out you're the one who's been protecting me. That's what mothers do, I said simply. We protect our children, whether they know it or not. Vanessa was still processing the revelation. The Monarch, the Peterson building. You own them both? And your company invested in Summit Marketing? Why go through all that secrecy? Because I wanted Robert to succeed on his own terms, I explained. If I had revealed my financial status earlier, how many people would have claimed his success was due to his mother's money and connections? Including perhaps you? She had the grace to look ashamed. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've made it quite clear how you feel about the cleaning lady being connected to your social circle. Would you have agreed to marry Robert if you'd known his mother was wealthy but still chose to clean houses? Robert intervened. Mom, that's enough. Vanessa's been making an effort lately. I nodded. You're right. I apologize, Vanessa. That was unnecessary. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Finally, Robert asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why reveal all this now? What changed? I considered my answer carefully. Several things. Seeing Dr. Taylor try to push you out of your own company. Watching you struggle with the increased mortgage rate, which, by the way, was my doing. I wanted to test whether you and Vanessa valued the lifestyle more than financial prudence. You raised our mortgage rate on purpose? Vanessa asked incredulously. A small test, I admitted. And you passed. You were willing to consider other housing options rather than stretching yourselves too thin financially. I still don't understand why you kept cleaning, Robert persisted. All these years, all that hard physical labor when you didn't need to work at all. I moved back to my desk and sat down, gesturing for them both to do the same. Let me tell you about Mrs. Whitmore. The woman whose house I came to yesterday? Vanessa asked. Yes. I've cleaned for Martha Whitmore for 15 years. When I first started, she was recently widowed. Her husband had left her with substantial wealth, but also substantial debt she didn't know about. She was devastated, not just by the loss, but by the deception. I smiled at the memory. One day, while I was cleaning her study, she was on the phone with her financial advisor, who was patronizing her terribly. After she hung up, she was in tears. I hesitated, then offered some advice about restructuring her investments. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head, but she was desperate enough to listen. You helped her with financial advice? Robert asked, while cleaning her house? I did, and it worked. Over time, I helped her rebuild her financial security. Martha never saw me as just a cleaning lady. She saw me as a person with valuable knowledge who happened to clean her home. That's the difference, Robert. Some people see the job, others see the human being doing the job. Vanessa shifted, uncomfortably in her seat. So all this time, when my parents and I were looking down on me? I finished for her. Yes, I noticed. Just as I noticed when you began to reconsider those attitudes recently. I feel terrible, she said, quietly. The things I said to my mother about you. The Target handbag? I smiled. That was deliberate, by the way. I have plenty of designer options. Robert ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart catch. I don't know how to process all this. I feel like my entire childhood was some kind of, I don't know, social experiment. Not an experiment, I corrected. A different kind of education. I could have given you everything, Robert. A trust fund, an expensive private school, connections to launch your career. But would you be the same person you are now? Would you have the same work ethic, the same appreciation for what you've earned? Probably not, he admitted reluctantly. Definitely not, I said. I've cleaned the homes of many wealthy families. I've seen what happens to children who never face adversity, who are handed everything without earning it. Vanessa looked thoughtful. My brother, she said suddenly. He's 34 and still living off my parents. 3 failed businesses that Daddy funded. No consequences, no real growth. I nodded. Exactly. That's what I wanted to protect. You from, Robert? So what happens now? He asked. Are you going to stop cleaning? I've been considering scaling back, I admitted. Keeping just a few longtime clients like Martha Whitmore. My investments require more attention these days. Robert stood again, pacing the office. I just can't believe you own the Peterson building. I negotiated that lease for weeks. thinking I was getting a good deal. You were, I assured him. I instructed the property manager to treat Summit Marketing like any other tenant. No special favors. Except for the tenant incentive program that miraculously appeared when I needed it, he pointed out wryly. Well, perhaps one small favor, I conceded. Vanessa had been quiet, but now she looked directly at me. Does this change our wedding? Plans. Do you still want me to buy that dress for you? I laughed. Actually, I already have something in mind. But I appreciate that you're asking now rather than telling. She flushed. I deserve that. I'm sorry, Eleanor, truly. It's forgiven, I said sincerely. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we learn from them. Robert moved to stand beside me. All this time, I thought I needed to make something of myself to make you proud. To somehow make up for all your sacrifices. I stood and took his hands in mine. You have made me proud, Robert. Not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you are. Your kindness, your determination, your integrity. Those things can't be bought. He pulled me into a tight hug, and over his shoulder, I could see Vanessa watching us with new eyes, seeing not the cleaning lady and her son, but a successful businesswoman and the child she had raised with intention and purpose. The next few weeks brought significant changes. Robert, armed with the knowledge of my financial backing, grew more confident in his leadership of Summit Marketing. He negotiated more aggressively with clients, knowing he had solid financial footing if a deal fell through. Vanessa, to her credit, made genuine efforts to adjust her perspective. She invited me to lunch at her favorite restaurant, asking thoughtful questions about my business strategies and investment philosophy. When the waiter treated me dismissively, assuming Vanessa was the one with the financial means, she corrected him firmly. Actually, my mother-in-law will be paying today, she said, gesturing to me. She owns this building, among others. The waiter's expression was priceless. As the wedding approached, I decided it was time to have a conversation with Dr. and Mrs. Taylor. I invited them to my downtown office, the elegant corner suite I rarely used but maintained for business meetings. My assistant, yes, I had one, though Robert never knew, greeted them with professional courtesy and showed them in. Dr. Taylor's face registered shock when he saw me seated behind the massive desk. Eleanor? What is this? Where's Miss Phoenix? I am Ms. Phoenix, I replied calmly. Eleanor Phoenix Green, founder and CEO of Phoenix Holdings. Please have a seat. Mrs. Taylor sank into a chair, clearly stunned. Dr. Taylor remained standing, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, wariness. I don't understand, he said. You're a cleaning woman. I am a woman who cleans, I corrected. I'm also the primary investor in your daughter's fiancé's company, the owner of the building where your hospital's administrative offices are located, and a major donor to 3 medical research foundations that support your department. He sat down heavily. This is impossible. No, just improbable, I replied. I've found that people rarely look beyond the surface. When they see a woman in a cleaning uniform, they see only that, not the person wearing it, certainly not a potential business competitor. Why are we here? Mrs. Taylor asked, regaining her composure somewhat. Because we're about to become family, I said, and I thought it was time we understood each other. Robert and Vanessa know the truth about my financial situation now. I wanted to ensure you heard it from me directly, rather than through them. Dr. Taylor leaned forward. So all this time when I was condescending, dismissive, treating me as socially inferior, I offered. Yes, I noticed. His face reddened. I never intended. Yes, you did, I interrupted, gently. And that's precisely why I wanted this meeting. Not to embarrass you, but to help you understand something important about your daughter's future husband. Mrs. Taylor looked up. What about Robert? He was raised by a mother who cleaned houses for a living, I said. That experience shaped his character, his values, his work ethic. The fact that I also happen to be wealthy doesn't change the fundamental truth that Robert comes from humble beginnings, and he's better for it. Dr. Taylor nodded slowly. I see your point, and I owe you an apology, clearly. Accepted, I said. Now, about the wedding. I understand you've generously offered to pay for most of it. We have, Mrs. Taylor confirmed. It's tradition, after all. I'd like to contribute, I said. Perhaps I could cover the venue costs? The Carter Museum is lovely, but I happen to own a boutique hotel downtown with a stunning rooftop garden. It would make a breathtaking setting for the ceremony. Dr. Taylor's eyebrows shot up. You own the Emerald Plaza Hotel? Among others, I confirmed. The reception could be held in the grand ballroom, my gift to Robert and Vanessa, if they're amenable. The Taylors exchanged glances, clearly recalibrating their understanding of the situation. That's extremely generous. Dr. Taylor finally said. It's what family does, I replied. Which brings me to my final point. I understand you've been concerned about Robert's ability to provide the lifestyle Vanessa is accustomed to. We only want what's best for our daughter, Mrs. Taylor said defensively. Of course. And I want what's best for my son. The difference is that I believe what's best for Robert is to make his own way without relying on my wealth. I hope you'll respect that approach, even if it differs from your own parenting philosophy. Dr. Taylor frowned. Are you saying you won't be supporting them financially? I'm saying I'll support them in ways that don't create dependence, I clarified. I've already invested in Summit Marketing because it's a sound business decision, not because Robert is my son. Beyond that, they need to build their life together on their own terms. Even if that means Vanessa has to adjust her expectations? Mrs. Taylor asked, a challenge in her voice. Especially then, I replied evenly. The most valuable gift we can give our children is the ability to find happiness regardless of their bank balance. The conversation continued for another hour, touching on business, parenting, and eventually finding common ground in our shared hope for Robert and Vanessa's future. By the time they left, the Taylors were regarding me with a new respect, not because of my wealth, but because they finally saw me as an equal. That evening, Robert called. Did you really invite my future in-laws to your office just to tell them you own half of downtown Denver? I laughed. Not quite half. And it was a necessary conversation. Well, whatever you said worked. Dr. Taylor just called me and actually apologized for trying to push me out of my CEO position. He said he'd misjudged me based on limited information. Good, I said. And what about the hotel for the wedding? Is that something you and Vanessa might want to consider? Are you kidding? Vanessa is over the moon about it. The Emerald Plaza is one of the most exclusive venues in the city. She's already talking about the garden ceremony at sunset. I'm glad she likes the idea, I said. And I hope you do too. I do, he assured me. Though it's going to take time to get used to all this. My mom, the secret millionaire. Multimillionaire, I corrected teasingly. If we're being technical. He chuckled, then grew serious. Mom? Thank you. Not just for the hotel, but for everything. For working so hard all those years. For teaching me what really matters. You're welcome, sweetheart, I replied, my throat tight with emotion. It was worth every minute. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, my relationship with Robert and Vanessa evolved in unexpected ways. Rather than treating me differently because of my wealth, they seemed to value me more for the person I'd always been, the hardworking, principled woman who happened to clean houses for a living. Vanessa, particularly, underwent a transformation. She asked thoughtful questions about my experiences cleaning for wealthy families, genuinely interested in the perspective it had given me. Did they really never notice you listening to their business calls? She asked during a wedding planning session. Almost never, I confirmed. It's remarkable how invisible service workers become in certain settings. It's as if the uniform erases the person wearing it. She nodded thoughtfully. I was like that. I'm sorry. You're learning, I assured her. That's what matters. The most surprising development came when Vanessa asked if I would continue my cleaning business after the wedding. If you want to, she clarified. Quickly. Not that you need to, obviously. But if it's something you enjoy. I'm cutting back, I explained. Keeping just a few longtime clients. Why do you ask? She hesitated. I was thinking, maybe I could come with you sometime? Learn what it's like? I feel like I've lived in such a bubble, and Robert speaks so highly of what your work taught him. I smiled, genuinely touched by her request. I'd like that, Vanessa. Very much. The day before the wedding, Vanessa joined me at Martha Whitmore's house. I provided her with a cleaning apron and gloves, showing her how to properly mix cleaning solutions and efficiently tackle each room. The secret is to work systematically, I explained. Top to bottom, left to right. That way, you never miss anything. She listened attentively, following my instructions with surprising dedication. When Martha arrived home early and found us polishing the dining room table together, she didn't bat an eye. You must be Vanessa, she said warmly. Eleanor's told me all about you. Congratulations on your wedding tomorrow. Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore, Vanessa replied, looking somewhat sheepish in her cleaning attire. I'm just learning from the best. Martha's eyes twinkled as she glanced at me. That you certainly are, in more ways than you might realize. Later, as we drove home, Vanessa was quiet, contemplative. What are you thinking? I asked. That I've been judging people by completely meaningless standards, she replied. Mrs. Whitmore treated us both with the same respect, even though I was clearly a novice cleaner. My mother would have been mortified to see me cleaning someone's house. Different perspectives, I said. Neither entirely right nor wrong, just different. No, you're wrong there, Vanessa said firmly. Some perspectives are better than others, more humane, more just. I want to be more like you, Eleanor, seeing people for who they are, not what they do or what they own. I reached over and squeezed her hand. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. The rooftop garden of the Emerald Plaza Hotel was transformed with flowers and twinkling lights. Guests began arriving, a mix of Denver's social elite and Robert's more modest connections from his childhood and career. I wore a designer gown in soft blue, elegant without being ostentatious. When Robert saw me in the preparation suite, his eyes widened. Mom, you look incredible, he said, adjusting his tie nervously. Very different from your cleaning uniform. But still me, I replied, straightening his tie for him. The clothes don't make the woman, remember? He nodded. I remember everything you taught me, especially now. As I took my place in the front row, I noticed a few surprised glances from guests who had known me only as the cleaning lady. Martha Whitmore caught my eye from across the aisle and gave me a knowing wink. She'd kept my secret all these years, understanding that my choices were my own. The ceremony was beautiful, with Robert and Vanessa exchanging vows against the backdrop of Denver's skyline. During the reception, Dr. Taylor approached me, champagne in hand. Your son is a remarkable young man, he said. You raised him well. Thank you, I replied. Your daughter is quite special too. She's grown a lot recently. He nodded. Yes, she has. She told us about cleaning Mrs. Whitmore's house with you yesterday. Catherine, my wife, was horrified at first. He chuckled. But Vanessa was so enthusiastic about what she'd learned, not just about cleaning, but about perspective. I think you've been a good influence. We all influence each other, I said diplomatically. That's what family does. Later, during the father-daughter dance, I watched Vanessa and Dr. Taylor moving gracefully across the floor. Robert came to sit beside me. "Happy?" I asked. "Very," he confirmed, though I'm still processing everything that's happened these past few weeks. Finding out my mom is secretly one of Denver's biggest property owners is a lot to take in. I laughed. "Just think of me as the same mom who packed your lunches and taught you to tie your shoes. The bank balance doesn't change who I am." "I know that now," he said seriously, "and I'm going to make sure I never forget it." The band started playing a slower song, and Robert stood, offering me his hand. "Dance with me?" As we moved across the dance floor, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us here. From those early days of cleaning houses to put food on the table, to secretly building my empire while raising a son who understood the value of hard work and integrity. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked. "About choices," I replied, "and how they shape us. I chose to keep cleaning houses even after I didn't need to financially. You chose to start your own business rather than rely on connections or shortcuts. Vanessa is choosing to reconsider her values and prejudices. And that's why you revealed everything when you did," he realized. "You wanted to see what choices we would make." "I wanted you to have all the information necessary to make the right choices," I corrected, "and you did." As the song ended, I saw Vanessa approaching, radiant in her wedding gown. She hugged me warmly, no longer the privileged young woman who had once been embarrassed by her fiancé's cleaning lady mother. "Thank you for everything, Eleanor," she said sincerely, "for raising such an amazing son, for teaching me what really matters, and yes, for the spectacular wedding venue." She grinned, glancing around at the elegant ballroom. "Your family now," I replied simply. "This is what we do for family." Later that evening, as the celebration continued around us, I found a quiet moment alone on the rooftop garden. The city lights spread out below me, including several buildings that belonged to Phoenix Holdings. All those years of listening and learning, investing and building, had created this legacy, not just of wealth, but of values that would continue through Robert and perhaps someday through his children. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" A voice beside me made me turn. It was Martha Whitmore, elegant in her evening wear, quite different from the casual clothes she wore when I cleaned her home. "One of the best in the city," I agreed. "I remember when you first told me about buying this hotel," she said. "You were scrubbing my kitchen floor at the time." I laughed. "Those were the days." "You never wanted recognition," Martha observed. "All these years, all that success, and you kept right on cleaning houses." "The work kept me grounded," I explained. "Reminded me of what's real, what matters." She nodded in understanding. "And now? Will you finally retire the cleaning apron?" I considered the question, watching as Robert and Vanessa danced, their faces alight with joy. "Perhaps," I conceded, "though I might keep a few special clients." Martha smiled. "I'd be honored to remain on that list." "Always," I assured her. "Some connections are too valuable to give up." As the evening drew to a close and guests began to depart, Dr. and Mrs. Taylor approached me one last time. "We underestimated you, Eleanor," Dr. Taylor said frankly. "I hope you can forgive our narrow perspective." "Already forgotten," I replied graciously. "We're family now, after all." Mrs. Taylor hesitated, then asked, "Will you continue your cleaning business?" The question wasn't asked with judgment, but with genuine curiosity. "Perhaps on a limited basis," I said. "The work itself has value, regardless of whether I need the income." She nodded slowly, processing this concept that clearly challenged her worldview. "I think I'm beginning to understand." As they walked away, Robert joined me again. "Ready to go, Mom? The car's waiting to take you home." "Actually," I said, making a spontaneous decision. I thought I might stay at the penthouse tonight. It's silly to drive all the way home when I have a perfectly good suite upstairs. Robert's eyes widened. The penthouse is yours too? Of course, I replied with a wink. I own the hotel, remember? He shook his head, laughing. I don't think I'll ever get used to this. You will, I assured him. Just remember, regardless of where I sleep tonight, in a penthouse suite or our family home, I'm still the same person. The cleaning lady who raised you, who taught you the value of hard work and integrity. The best cleaning lady in Denver, he agreed, hugging me tightly. And don't you forget it, I whispered, holding my son close one last time before he left with his new bride to begin their life together. A life built on a foundation of truth, respect, and the understanding that a person's worth never depends on their job title or bank balance. That foundation, I knew, was my true legacy, far more valuable than any property or investment portfolio could ever be. 6 months after the wedding, I found myself in an unexpected position, sitting in the boardroom of Emerald Ventures, openly discussing investment strategies with a team of financial analysts. Robert sat beside me, no longer shocked by my business acumen, but proud to be working alongside his mother on a new joint venture. The transition from secret millionaire to public businesswoman hadn't been entirely smooth. Some of my cleaning clients were confused or embarrassed when they learned about my financial status. A few even stopped hiring me, uncomfortable with the shift in perceived power dynamics. But the ones who mattered, like Martha Whitmore, simply laughed and said they'd suspected all along. Eleanor, we need to discuss the Madison Street development, said James Holloway, my longtime financial advisor. The city council is requesting additional green space before approving the permits. I nodded, reviewing the plans spread across the table. We can reconfigure the southeastern corner to include a community garden. It would reduce our rentable square footage by approximately 8%, but the goodwill and expedited approval process would offset the loss. Robert chimed in. Plus, it aligns with Summit's new environmental initiative. We could partner on the marketing campaign, highlight the sustainability aspects. Excellent point, I agreed, feeling a surge of maternal pride at how naturally Robert had taken to the business side of property development. His marketing expertise brought a fresh perspective to our projects, while my years of experience provided the foundation. After the meeting, Robert and I walked to a nearby cafe for lunch, something that had become our weekly tradition. As we settled at a corner table, he brought up a subject I'd been expecting. Mom, Vanessa and I have been talking. We're thinking of starting a family soon. I smiled, hiding my emotional reaction behind my menu. That's wonderful news. You'll both be excellent parents. Thanks. He hesitated, stirring his coffee absently. But it's made us think about what kind of values we want to pass on to our children. The work ethic, the perspective you instilled in me, but without some of the complications. Complications? I raised an eyebrow. The secrecy, he clarified, not telling me about our financial situation for all those years. I understand why you did it, and I'm grateful for the lessons. But sometimes I wonder if there could have been another way. I set my menu down, giving his concerns my full attention. That's a fair question. Looking back, would I do some things differently? Probably. But parenting doesn't come with a manual, Robert. I did what I thought was best with the perspective I had at the time. I know, he assured me quickly, and I'm not criticizing. I just want to learn from both what you did right and what might have been less ideal. The greatest gift you can give your children isn't financial security, I said after a thoughtful pause. It's the tools to build their own security, internal and external. If I succeeded in giving you those tools, then any missteps along the way were worth it. He nodded, then changed the subject slightly. Vanessa has been really different since everything came out. Did you know she's volunteering at a women's shelter downtown, teaching financial literacy classes? This genuinely surprised me. No, I didn't know that. She says your story inspired her, a woman building wealth while working in a field others look down on. She's trying to help women see possibilities beyond their current circumstances. I felt an unexpected lump in my throat. That's quite meaningful, Robert. Yeah, it is. He grinned. Though she still can't operate a vacuum cleaner properly. That one cleaning session with you didn't quite take. We both laughed. The momentary tension dissolved. As we finished our lunch, Robert mentioned that he and Vanessa were hosting a dinner party that weekend. Nothing fancy, he assured me. Just a few friends and some of Vanessa's family. Her parents will be there. I'd really like you to come. Of course, I agreed. Should I bring anything? He hesitated, then said with careful casualness, just yourself. Though, maybe not in your cleaning uniform this time. I raised an eyebrow. Are you embarrassed by my work, Robert? No. God, no. He flushed. It's just... Now that everyone knows about your business success, it seems... I don't know. Like you're hiding behind the uniform somehow. Interesting perspective, I mused. But cleaning isn't a disguise for me, Robert. It's part of who I am, just as much as being CEO of Phoenix Holdings. He looked chastened. You're right. I'm sorry. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. The night of the dinner party, I chose a middle path. Elegant but understated business attire rather than my cleaning clothes or high-end designer wear. When I arrived at Robert and Vanessa's condo, they'd kept the Monarch unit despite knowing about my ownership. Vanessa greeted me warmly. Eleanor, I'm so glad you could make it. Her welcome seemed genuine, a far cry from the barely concealed disdain of our early encounters. Come in, everyone's in the living room. The gathering was intimate. Robert's colleagues from Summit Marketing, a few of Vanessa's friends, and her parents. Dr. and Mrs. Taylor approached as soon as they saw me, their demeanor markedly different from our previous interactions. Eleanor, wonderful to see you, Dr. Taylor said, offering a cocktail. I was just telling Robert about a potential client for Summit. The medical device company I consult for is looking to refresh their brand. That sounds promising, I replied, accepting the drink. Though I try not to meddle too much in Robert's business decisions these days. Unlike some people, Mrs. Taylor said with a pointed look at her husband, who had the grace to look sheepish. The dinner conversation flowed naturally, touching on business, local politics, and art. I noticed how Robert and Vanessa functioned as true partners, each deferring to the other's strengths and supporting their initiatives. When the topic turned to real estate, Dr. Taylor asked about my latest project. I understand you're developing that old factory complex on River Street? Yes, I confirmed. We're converting it to mixed use, affordable housing, community spaces, and small business incubators. Phoenix Holdings is partnering with the city on the initiative. Sounds more philanthropic than profitable, he observed. The two aren't. Mutually exclusive, I replied. Sustainable communities create sustainable returns, just on a longer timeline than most developers are comfortable with. Vanessa leaned forward, genuinely interested. Is that the project you're using for the apprenticeship program you mentioned? I nodded, pleased she remembered. Yes, we're training people from underserved communities in construction and property management, creating pathways to careers, not just jobs. Including former cleaning staff, Robert added with a smile in my direction. Mom's offering specialized management tracks for service workers looking to advance. The genuine admiration in his voice warmed me. He had truly come to appreciate the value of all work, regardless of society's hierarchical views. After dinner, as guests mingled over coffee and dessert, Mrs. Taylor sought me out on the balcony where I'd stepped for a moment of quiet. I owe you an apology, Eleanor, she said without preamble. A more substantial one than I've offered previously. I turned to face her, surprised by her directness. That's not necessary. It is, she insisted. I judged you solely on your occupation, never considering who you might be beyond that. It was narrow-minded and, frankly, beneath the values I claim to hold. Her candor was unexpected and appreciated. Thank you for saying that. Vanessa has changed since your revelation, she continued, in ways I wouldn't have predicted. She's questioning assumptions she's held her entire life, assumptions Catherine and I instilled in her. Growth often requires questioning our foundations, I offered. It doesn't mean rejecting them entirely. She nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps, but I've been doing some questioning of my own lately. 25 years running an interior design firm catering to Denver's elite, and I'm not sure I've made the impact you have through your cleaning business and quiet investments. Different paths, different impacts, I said. Your design work brings beauty and function to people's lives. That has value. You're gracious, she replied with a small smile. More so than I deserve, given how I treated you initially. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the city lights. Finally, she asked a question that surprised me with its insight. Do you ever miss the anonymity? Being underestimated gave you certain advantages in business, didn't it? I considered this. It did. People reveal more to someone they perceive as harmless or irrelevant. That information proved valuable countless times. But now I'm discovering the advantages of visibility, I admitted. The ability to influence openly rather than from the shadows. To serve as an example for others facing similar prejudices about their work. Our conversation was interrupted by Robert calling everyone together for a toast. As we rejoined the group, I noticed Vanessa whispering something to him, looking nervous but determined. He nodded encouragingly. Everyone, Robert announced, raising his glass. Thank you all for coming tonight. Vanessa and I have some news we'd like to share. The room quieted in anticipation. Vanessa stepped forward, took a deep breath, and said, We're expecting. Baby Green will be joining us in about 7 months. Congratulations erupted around us. Mrs. Taylor embraced her daughter tearfully, while Dr. Taylor shook Robert's hand with obvious pride. When it was my turn, I hugged them both, too overwhelmed for words momentarily. Congratulations, I finally managed. I'm so happy for you both. We have something else to ask you, Robert said, keeping his arm around Vanessa. We've been talking about our living situation, and with the baby coming. You need a bigger place? I guessed. I can help you look for something suitable. Vanessa shook her head. Actually, we've been talking about your house, the one you raised Robert in. It's in a great school district, has a yard for children to play in. We're wondering if you'd consider selling it to us, Robert finished. At fair market value, of course. No special treatment. I blinked in surprise. My house? But it's so modest compared to the Monarch, and further from your offices. That's partly the point, Vanessa explained. We want our child to grow up with the values you instilled in Robert, understanding the difference between needs and wants, appreciating what they have rather than always reaching for more. Besides, Robert added with a grin, when the CEO of Summit Marketing decides to work remotely 2 days a week, who's going to argue? I was deeply touched by their request and the reasoning behind it. If you're sure that's what you want, we can certainly discuss it. Though, where would I live? We thought of that too, Vanessa said. There's that penthouse at the Emerald Plaza you never use. You could make it your primary residence, be closer to your downtown operations. Their thoughtfulness, considering not just their needs but mine as well, demonstrated how much they had both grown. Let me think about it, I replied, not wanting to make such a significant decision on an emotional evening. But I appreciate the offer. Later, as the party wound down and guests began departing, Robert pulled me aside for a private moment. "Mom, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. Something about the baby." "Oh?" I prompted when he hesitated. "If it's a girl, we'd like to name her Eleanor," he said softly, "after the strongest, wisest woman we know." I felt tears spring to my eyes before I could control them. "Robert, I'm incredibly honored. We want our daughter to grow up knowing her grandmother's story," he continued. "How you built a business empire while scrubbing floors. How you valued the dignity of all work. How you never stopped learning and growing, no matter what obstacles you faced." "Those are lessons worth passing down," I agreed, composing myself, though perhaps with fewer decades of secrecy. He laughed, definitely with less secrecy, but with all the determination and principle. As I prepared to leave, Vanessa approached with a somewhat awkward expression. "Eleanor, I have a strange request." "What is it?" I asked curiously. Would you be willing to teach me how to properly clean a house?" She rushed on before I could respond. "Not because I expect to become a professional or anything, but because I want to understand what you did all those years. I want to appreciate the skill and knowledge involved, not just theoretically, but practically." Her request was so unexpected and sincere that it touched me deeply. "I'd be happy to, Vanessa. It's not as simple as most people think." "I know," she said earnestly. "When I tried to help you at Mrs. Whitmore's house, I realized how little I knew about something so fundamental. If I'm going to teach my child, your grandchild, about the value of all work, I should understand it myself." Her growth from the privileged, somewhat dismissive young woman I'd first met to this thoughtful, self-aware person was remarkable. "We'll start next weekend," I promised. "Bring old clothes and prepare to work harder than you ever have in an interior design consultation." She laughed. "I'm looking forward to it, genuinely." On the drive home, I reflected on the evening's revelations. My grandchild would grow up knowing me as both Eleanor the cleaning lady and Eleanor the business mogul. They wouldn't experience the artificial separation between these identities that Robert had. Perhaps a healthier integration of understanding that a person's worth transcends both their profession and their financial status. The following weekend, true to my word, I arrived at Robert and Vanessa's condo with cleaning supplies and a no-nonsense attitude. Vanessa had dressed appropriately in old jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "First lesson," I announced, setting down my caddy of supplies. "Cleaning isn't just about making things look nice. It's about understanding materials, chemistry, efficiency, and attention to detail." For the next 4 hours, I guided her through a thorough cleaning of their condo. I showed her how different surfaces required different approaches, how to clean systematically to avoid missing areas, how to protect her body from strain while working efficiently. To her credit, Vanessa was an attentive student. She asked thoughtful questions and didn't shy away from the less pleasant tasks. When we finished, she collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted but satisfied. "I had no idea it was so complex," she admitted, "or so physically demanding." "You did this for 30 years?" "And still do occasionally," I reminded her, "though less frequently now." She shook her head in wonder. "When I think about how dismissive I was, how I thought it was unskilled work anyone could do." "Many people share that misconception," I said, sitting beside her. "It's why service work is undervalued and underpaid, despite being essential to society's functioning." "I get it now," she said sincerely, "and I want to make sure my child gets it too, no matter what privileges they grow up with." Over the following months, our relationship deepened in unexpected ways. Vanessa continued her cleaning lessons, gradually improving her skills while developing a genuine respect for the profession. Meanwhile, I helped Robert navigate the challenges of balancing his growing business with preparing for parenthood. As Vanessa's due date approached, I made a decision about their request to purchase my house. After careful consideration, I invited them over for dinner to discuss it. "I've thought about your offer," I told them as we sat in the living room, where Robert had grown up. "And I have a counter-proposal." They exchanged curious glances. "I'm not going to sell you this house," I continued. "I'm going to gift it to you. To my grandchild, technically, with you as trustees until they're of age." "Mom, we can't accept that," Robert protested. "It's too generous." "Let me finish," I said firmly. "This gift comes with conditions. First, you'll make a donation equal to the home's value to the apprenticeship program at Phoenix Holdings. That money will help others build their own paths to financial security." Vanessa nodded thoughtfully. "That's a meaningful approach." "Second," I continued, "you'll establish a trust for your child that doesn't grant unrestricted access to funds until they've demonstrated financial responsibility, perhaps through education, employment, or community service." "Similar to how you handled my upbringing," Robert observed, supporting without spoiling. "Exactly. And finally, you'll both commit to volunteering regularly with the Foundation for Service Workers I'm establishing. I want my grandchild to grow up seeing their parents demonstrating the values you want to instill, not just talking about them." They considered my proposal seriously, conferring quietly before responding. "We accept," Robert said finally. "With one addition of our own. We want you to maintain a room here, to stay connected to this home and to us. This shouldn't be about you moving out so we can move in. It should be about expanding our family circle." Their thoughtfulness touched me deeply. I'd like that very much. 2 weeks later, Vanessa went into labor 3 weeks early. Robert called me at 2 a.m, his voice a mixture of excitement and panic. I met them at the hospital, providing calm support as they navigated the intensified birth plan. After 14 hours of labor, Eleanor Catherine Green entered the world, tiny but healthy, with a full head of dark hair and her father's determined expression. When the nurse placed her in my arms for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of continuity, of lessons and values passing from one generation to the next. "Hello, little Eleanor," I whispered. "You come from a line of strong women. Women who know that true worth isn't measured by job titles or bank accounts, but by integrity, perseverance, and kindness." As I gently rocked my namesake, I noticed Vanessa watching us with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. For raising Robert to be the man he is. For showing me what real strength looks like. For giving us a foundation to build our family on." In that moment, holding my granddaughter while looking at my son and daughter-in-law, I felt the culmination of my life's true work. Not the property empire I'd built or the investments I'd grown, but the values I'd maintained and passed along despite society's contrary pressures. 6 months later, we celebrated little Eleanor's christening in the garden of my former home, now Robert and Vanessa's family home. The modest house had been refreshed but maintained its character, a testament to the young couple's commitment to substance over appearance. During the reception, I overheard Dr. Taylor speaking to a colleague, not realizing I was nearby. My son-in-law's mother, remarkable woman, built a real estate empire while working as a cleaning professional, taught me more about authentic success than my 40 years in medicine. His sincerity was evident, demonstrating how profoundly perspectives can shift when we open ourselves to reconsidering our assumptions. As guests mingled in the backyard where Robert had once played, Martha Whitmore approached me, champagne glass in hand. "Full circle, isn't it?" she observed. "From cleaning houses to ensure your son's future, to watching him raise his daughter in the home you provided. Life has a way of creating meaningful patterns if we pay attention," I agreed. "Will you tell her the whole story?" Martha asked, nodding toward baby Eleanor, who was being passed among adoring relatives. About the cleaning lady who secretly owned half of Denver? I smiled, watching as Vanessa gently reclaimed her daughter from an over-enthusiastic aunt. I won't need to. Her parents will raise her understanding that all honest work has dignity, that true character isn't determined by occupation or wealth. And they learned that from you, Martha noted. Sometimes the most important lessons take the longest to teach, I replied. And sometimes they require unexpected methods. Later that evening, as twilight settled over the garden and guests departed, I found myself alone with my granddaughter. Robert and Vanessa were seeing off the last visitors, and I had volunteered for baby duty. Your grandmother has a secret to share, I whispered to the drowsy infant in my arms. The most valuable things I own aren't buildings or companies. They're the calluses on these hands from years of honest work, the wisdom gained from being underestimated, the satisfaction of knowing your father grew into a man who judges people by their character, not their job title. Little Eleanor gazed up at me with solemn eyes, as if absorbing every word. You'll grow up with advantages your father didn't have, I continued softly. But I hope you'll also inherit his compassion, his work ethic, his integrity. Those are the true family treasures, worth far more than any property or investment portfolio. Robert found us like that, grandmother whispering life wisdom to granddaughter in the fading light. He slipped onto the porch swing beside me, his presence a comfortable silence. What are you two conspiring about? He asked eventually. I'm sharing investment advice, I replied with a smile. Starting her financial education early. He chuckled. Just make sure you include the part about the value of cleaning toilets properly. That seems to be a family tradition now. Along with owning the building where the toilets are located, I added dryly. We shared a laugh, comfortable in the legacy we were both extending and reshaping. As the stars emerged above us, I felt a profound sense of completion. My journey from struggling widow to secret millionaire had reached a fitting conclusion, not in wealth or recognition, but in values successfully transmitted to the next generation, and now to the generation beyond. Mom? Robert's voice broke into my thoughts. Thank you. Not just for the house or the business support or everything material, but for showing all of us what really matters. You're welcome, son, I replied, shifting his sleeping daughter into his arms. Just remember to pass it on. We will, he promised, gazing down at his namesake. Little Eleanor will grow up knowing that her grandmother was never just the cleaning lady. She was the woman who showed us all that true dignity comes from how you live, not what you own. As I watched my son cradling his daughter in the home where I had raised him, I knew that some legacies transcend bank accounts and property deeds. My greatest achievement wasn't the empire I'd built while scrubbing floors, but the values I'd polished to a shine and passed down. Values that would endure long after the buildings I owned had crumbled to dust. In that quiet moment, I felt the profound truth that had guided my life's unusual path. We are not defined by our jobs or our wealth, but by our integrity, our compassion, and our willingness to see the inherent worth in every person, whether they're cleaning a house or owning it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.